Welcome to Head to Toe Healing Live with Dr. Reese and our team today. Dr. Reese created Head to Toe Healing several years ago, and he's been helping people become pain-free and reverse chronic conditions. So listen up. Today we have a topic we're covering that a lot of times people don't realize they have, but it can be very irritating and not so fun. So today, well, before I go into that, Dr. Reese has created three macro methods with his head to toe healing product. And what that is the musculoskeletal system, nutrition, and mindfulness. And when you couple those three things together, you're able to get your body in a position where it can reverse chronic conditions and help you get off medication and start living a pain-free life. So today I have on our team, our specialists, we have Coach Gingy, Coach Sean, and Coach Ryan. Each are specialists in three areas, the macro methods that I discussed before. And today we're going to talk about the topic of candida. Candida is something that can be an overgrowth in people's bodies. Both men and women can experience this, and it can really cause a lot of discomfort and not a lot of fun. So I wanted to lead and have Coach Ryan talk first about how Candida can impact other body symptoms within it and actually just define what Candida is.
Well, thank you, Karen. As you said, Candida is an overgrowth. It's an overgrowth of yeast, but Candida exists naturally in the body. E. coli, H. pylori, there's things that can be bad when they overgrow, but they are, natural um, residents of our body, basically. So to me, the Candida problem is a metabolic problem. And we can get into that further later on. But to me, it's the metabolic dysfunction that causes candida to overgrow in the first place. And so it's to me, it's not necessarily a cause of other symptoms. It's the result of another problem, right? The candida itself is a symptom. So you might have all kinds of things going on that are basically just metabolic symptoms. You might have fatigue, you might have weight gain, you might have smells coming from you, you might have toenail fungus. There's all sorts of things that are associated with the candida problem. But again, both candida and all of those coexisting symptoms are, to me, a result of metabolic dysfunction.
Thank you for that. Coach Sean, when somebody has candida, it might impact their mobility and their structure. Do you have a perspective on that from the posture perspective?
Yeah, ultimately, there's two things that are happening when any type of issue in the organs, mainly in the gut and, stomach and digestion, but it's the pelvis. A lot of sitting posture, what I call it, is developed when the pelvis goes either posterior. Most pelvis is going to go posterior, where the back of the pelvis is coming down. And so what happens is that causes compression in the front to go up against the intestines, then the stomach, and with that, there's specific areas in the gut where things are supposed to be fermented, things are supposed to move, at a certain rate, and when that's disrupted, it can lead to a domino effect of other symptoms caused just by posture alone. But also, a lot of what's happening is people have forward head and rounded shoulders or just hump back. So their upper half is collapsing down while their lower half is pressing up. And so it's just essentially squeezing that hub of organs that we love so much and messing up a lot of their function, messing up a lot of the blood ability to circulate, lymphatic system, nerves as well. We talk about it every single time, but it's true. And I would always say, like, if you have an area in the body that's just not right, you have a dysfunction in that area, you can also look at your posture. And I can guarantee you, I would say the majority of the time, 80% of the time, the posture is also off in that same section. And so it's all connected. That's why we do this. And yeah, you just have to get moving and do the proper alignment therapy to pull everything back together and uncompress that mid zone to give your organs some relaxation. some relief. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Coach Gingy, how could having candida impact, or like an overgrowth of candida, impact somebody's mind with them navigating their world? Could it be disruptive?
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I don't know what's going on, but my system's kind of going on and off here. Anyway, could you repeat the question that you just asked me? I didn't
Ab
hear that.
Absolutely. Could somebody having candida impact their personal world, their mind, how they navigate, and could it be disruptive for them? What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, especially if they're trying to heal candida. If they're trying to reverse candida, if they're trying to alleviate their symptoms in some way. This is actually something that hits home personally for me because I did have candida issues for a while and I didn't know what it was. And the thing that was the difference maker for me is getting my head wrapped around what I was dealing with. And first and foremost, I was thinking, oh, I just have this yeast thing I have to get rid of. And these are all different symptoms. Like I had some excess dandruff. I even had dandruff in my beard. I would get these weird, like, things in my armpits that were kind of sore or almost like an ingrown hair in my armpits. But then I would have like athlete's foot or, random things like this. And then eventually one day I realized all those things were connected under the one label of Candida. And so I then started believing I have to kill Candida. I have to get it and eliminate it from the body. And it wasn't until I learned some simple facts about Candida being that it's a fungus that's naturally in the body. In fact, it's incredibly beneficial. It is one of the things that helps regulate your blood sugar. In fact, I even heard one person say that if you didn't have candida in your system, you could be diabetic after eating an orange, just because your body doesn't have the ability to absorb and use all the sugar, so the candida is there to kind of pick up the extra. And secondly, candida's lifespan is not measured in days, weeks, or months. It's measured in hours, which means if you have a candida issue that's lasting for more than a day, then it's some kind of chronic thing that's going on in the body that keeps candida proliferating and active. So once I figured those kind of things out, it allowed me to look towards the root cause of what's going on with candida, what I was doing on a daily basis that contributed to candida. And once figuring that out and actually alleviating it, like completely reversing it for good, it was a massive mind shift. Like I could relax again. I didn't have to worry about these things. There was a whole lot of other mental and emotional symptoms that got alleviated too that I didn't realize were connected. Because candida can cause blood sugar imbalances, and it's there because there's imbalances in the system, either in the microbiome or in the gut or something like that. And so there's other things going on that once candida is alleviated, the root cause of the candida is also alleviated. And that's what Ryan, I think, was speaking to. It's like the candida is a symptom of something deeper, something bigger that's going on, maybe a metabolic issue or a gut issue or something like that. And so you'd want to look at those because when those get alleviated, you're going to notice, wow, the candida's gone, but I have so much more energy and I don't know why. It's because there are a lot of things that are connected that maybe you haven't connected those dots yet. So getting your mind wrapped around what the issue is and what the root cause is, that can be incredibly impactful on not only your mental emotional health, but on solving the actual issue.
Thank you for that. So I wanted to look back with Ryan. Ryan, you talked about it potentially being a metabolic issue when it becomes an overgrowth. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Are there things people are doing, maybe in their lifestyle, that would make it grow more and get out of hand?
Yeah, of course. Well, we do see it more commonly in women. And one of the things that women do a lot more than men is they start taking drugs at a younger age, especially with antibiotics, over-the-counter painkillers, or more serious painkillers, and birth control. All three of those things massively deplete the immune system. So when the immune system gets low, you can get all kinds of things. You can get a candida outbreak. You could have, warts and cold sores and skin tags and all kinds of things like this. So yeah, they're fundamentally harming their metabolism from an early age. And, men do this as well, but of course, we're not given birth defects, and it's just women tend to listen to their doctors more and start listening to them at a younger age. And this could include antidepressants and other things as well, even in the teenage years. And you add this on to the prevalence of C-sectioned deliveries. When a baby is C-sectioned, it misses its first chance to get its first batch of good bacteria through the birth canal. And in modern times, some people are doing something about this. They're kind of smearing the baby with sort of uh, the vaginal mucus and stuff like that to seed the probiotic colonies. We see this a lot in sick children, and it's especially obvious when the mother or couple has multiple children. The first three children are fine. This fourth one has serious problems, including candida or common or frequent urinary tract infections or ear infections or anything like this. And it's always interesting. I always ask, was the child C-sectioned? And were the other children C-sectioned? And it's so common that the sick child, the one that we're being asked about, is the one that was C-sectioned. And so add that onto early drug use, injectables, and the fact that the nutrient supply is already low. You're already going to be deficient if you buy food from the grocery store, if you eat from the grocery store, or restaurants, or both. You are guaranteed to be deficient in a number of nutrients, including those that are especially important for the immune system. So when I say metabolism, the metabolism and the immune system are kind of the same thing. There's no specific location where the immune system starts and the metabolic system ends or whatever, right? It's all blended together, right? If you have a healthy metabolism, one of the consequences of that is having a healthy immune system. So yeah, there are a lot of things that people are doing. You add on to that any type of chemical stress, right? Sugar overloads, especially from sweetened drinks, alcohol use, smoking, vaping, lack of sleep, staying up on the phone till 2 in the morning, and all of these things are going to impact the immune system and the metabolism at the same time. Once again, because they're basically two different sides of the same coin. And all of these things combined are going to make it a lot more likely that you're going to have some sort of overgrowth problem. Not even just candida, but again, ear infections, urinary tract infections, sicknesses, colds, and flu, SIBO, all kinds of things.
Wow, that's incredible. That's more than I thought would impact getting candida and having it really open up other conditions. It sounds like a perfect storm for all kinds of chronic issues. Thank you for sharing about that, Ryan. Coach Sean, did you have something, a question or a comment that you wanted to share with the group?
Yes. So I actually learned something new today from Coach Gingy, and I thought it brought up a good point. Just speaking on Candida and actually Candida having uh, some essential importance, for lack of better words, in the body. And I wanted to kind of direct this question to Ryan or Gingy again, but basically what I learned, because I used to actively avoid oxalates until I realized that they played a role in the body. Um, I mean, all of us used to actively avoid cholesterol until we learned about its role in the body. And so, can we kind of like, if you have any other compounds or anything in the body that is actively demonized or stigmatized today, but could provide some actual benefit if in proper moderation. Does anybody know anything beyond that?
Well, I'm sure Ryan will probably be able to speak to this in depth, so I'll just jump in real quick and throw my 2 cents at it because it's the same type of mental frame or mindset where we look at the body like, oh, there's an issue with the gallbladder, just cut it out. Oh, there's an issue with the liver or the pancreas. Okay, just cut that part out. And oh, you got extra wisdom teeth. Okay, let's just go in there and cut those out. It's a way of kind of ignoring the natural innate intelligence of the body, thinking that, oh, candida, it's overgrowing, stupid candida, let's just poison it and cut it down and get it back to normal. It's like assuming that you know better than the body knows on how to regulate and manage the body. And that's kind of what, the medical monopoly side of the spectrum does is they think, well, I need to go take control of this body and normalize it, which is good if you have excess bleeding or some type of massive, like a car accident type of trauma. You do want them to go in and like take control of the situation and then stabilize you. But in this situation, if you have an issue with the gallbladder or candida or any other chronic thing, cutting it out and just, poisoning it out isn't going to work. You've got to actually see it as an intentional mechanistic piece of the body that is supposed to be there, like your tonsils. Why is like so many people got their tonsils removed? That's an essential aspect of your immune system. But we're like, tonsils, you don't need those. You got an infection? Okay, just cut them out. Just cut them out. No problem. It's the same, it comes from the same worldview, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And it's important to note that if it's in the body naturally, like even the way that you would look at a tumor, it's not this excess growth that's, killing off the body. We need to go in and kill the tumors. And it's a natural protective mechanism your body has put around something dangerous in the body. It's a coping mechanism for whatever the underlying cause is. And so if we start changing the frame of reference to look at the body as this amazing, intelligent, like amalgamation of all of these different little cells working together and microorganisms and all these biochemical pathways, it is vastly intelligent and vastly um, magnificent. I don't even know a better word for it, but it's like it's so divinely orchestrated that you couldn't just say, there's a problem there, let's just cut it out because that's connected to the whole. So the only way you're going to get to any real healing in the body is to address it holistically and address it with respect, like it knows what it's doing. Like someone told me a long time ago, no doctor has ever healed anybody. They're just creating the conditions in the body so that the body can heal itself. Like they put a cast on the bone and then they say, oh, I healed your broken bone. No, you didn't. You just set it up so that the bone would heal itself in a straight way. And so we had to look at the even candida in the same way. The doctor will give you an antifungal and it knocks the candida down. But the hope is that the other stuff will grow and then the normal checks and balances will reestablish themselves. There's an actual scientific term for this. It's called homeostasis. It's an organism's natural tendency to lean towards its neutral. Like if it's out of balance, it will seek balance no matter which direction. If your pH gets too alkaline, it'll try to get more acidic. If it gets too acidic, it'll try to get more alkaline. If your skin breaks or is ruptured in some way, it will rebond all those cells. It's naturally trying to heal all the time. So I'm sure Ryan will be like, oh, well, here's this and this and this and this, and these are all natural things in the body. But it's important to like have the right mindset on this stuff. The body is this amazing machine that heals itself. And if you, it's not even a machine, it's like it's all intelligent. I could go on and on about the magnificence of the body, but as far as specific things that are in the body that should be there, like if it's there naturally, it should be there. There's a purpose for it. There's a reason why the body developed this organ or tissue or muscle or whatever it is. It serves a purpose in the overall scheme of the operations of the body. And if we don't understand it, like tonsils, then we're just saying that the body knows better than we do. Ryan, you got something you want to say about it?
No, it's said pretty perfectly, right? In both the alternative and the mainstream world, the approach is just to carpet bomb the candida basically with antimicrobials, whether pharmaceutical or natural or both. And in some cases it does work, but I've seen a lot of people do candida protocols over the years, and some of them it went away super, super quickly, easily, no problem at all, and other people struggled for months and months and months and months. So there has to be a point where you say, okay, well, antimicrobials cannot be the be all end all in this situation. There has to be a reason why some people have such an easy time getting rid of the problem, and some people struggle with it for even years. So it can't just be the power of the antimicrobials, because we have an arsenal of very, very powerful antimicrobial things, both in the alternative and in the mainstream world. And if it was purely a microbial problem, then that would work every time. There would be no need to do anything else, right? But by my experience, my observation, it's the people with a healthier overall metabolism who have the easier time getting rid of it. In fact, myself, a few months ago, I noticed there was a little bit of white thrush on my tongue. Just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. And I have antimicrobials in the house. I've garlic and olive leaf extract and oil of oregano. And I just took just a little bit of them just for a few days, gone. And there was never any other symptoms associated with it. So, it was a very minor imbalance there. And the antimicrobials did the job very, very quickly. And of course, my overall nutrition is already stable. It's already quite good to begin with. So therefore, my body was very, very easily able to turn it around. And I've seen that in several cases as well. So there's a lot of people out there who are stuck on this antimicrobial treadmill, just doing one after another and doing biofilm disruptors and just doing, everything under the sun that's marketed to kill candida, and it's not guaranteed to work. And even if it does, if you don't change the conditions that led to it in the first place, then it will come back. Almost guaranteed.
What about Sean's question about what else is in the body that's naturally supposed to be there that's kind of demonized and tried to cut out? Like I threw in some tonsils and gallbladder surgeries and stuff like that. Do you have any other things that are supposed to be there that we demonize?
Well, yeah, we need all of our organs. So cutting out any organ is a huge, huge mistake unless it's, you get shot by a bullet or something and you need to remove that organ. I mean, I guess that's acceptable. It'll save your life. But other than that, I don't believe there's any accidents. Everything that's in the body should be in the body. And I guess since we're talking about candida, it would be good to bring H. pylori into this conversation because H. pylori has been even more demonized. Most of the mainstream world still discounts the importance of candida, especially since the alternative world grabbed onto candida as being so important for chronic fatigue syndrome. Many books and people, speakers, authors, they literally talk about them interchangeably. Like chronic fatigue syndrome is candida. It's the same thing. I think that's one reason that the mainstream has backed away from candida being a problem. But both sides have embraced the idea that H. pylori is a huge problem. And, you know, it is strongly implicated, right? It can cause havoc in the body if it's overgrown, but it's naturally occurring in the body and it's supposed to be. It's even named after a part of the body, right? The pylorus. It's a part of the stomach. It's where the H. pylori was first discovered. So, it's a natural resident, and other metabolic factors can lower our immune system and allow it to proliferate. And when it does proliferate, especially into other parts of the intestines and stuff, it can cause a huge problem. But again, the mainstream has been bickering about this for decades because, everybody knows that H. pylori causes ulcers, for example, right? Yet most people with H. pylori, not only do they not have ulcers, they don't have any symptoms at all. So there has to be some other explanation of why some people show symptoms of H. pylori, of candida, of herpes, whatever one of these infections you want to name, and the majority of people do not show those symptoms. Right? That's the explanation to make all this make sense, that the people who are healthy enough don't have symptoms. And when something goes wrong, symptoms can occur, and the proliferation of one of these bugs or funguses can be implicated just because it's there, right? It's an easy explanation. Say, oh, well, the H. pylori is there, so that's the cause. But again, that doesn't explain why most people who supposedly have H. pylori do not have any symptoms.
Thank you for that. Both of you explained so much, and I think there might be a misconception. Just a lot of times people generalize candida thinking it's just about a yeast infection, but there's so much more to it. And to know that it's supposed to be in our body, but sometimes it gets out of control. That's the key thing right there. We did have a question in the chat today from Michelle. She says, "Hi, I'm eating a lot of fats, proteins, pasture-raised eggs, avocados, walnuts, almonds, watermelon, blueberries, etc. I also eat Dave's light organic bread. Why am I so hungry at night? I always want sweets and salt." Ryan, could you address this, please?
Yeah, the clue is right there in the question. You're craving salt. Typically, cravings are either cravings for minerals or for protein. So when anybody is craving sweets, the first advice that I would give, actually even before that, is try drinking some water, because often people confuse hunger for thirst. They're really just thirsty. A lot of times thirst will knock out those cravings, especially if there's salt in the drink. But other than that, protein and salt usually get rid of cravings. And so when you're eating food, it doesn't matter what food it is. She's naming some good foods here. When you're eating from a food supply that's fundamentally deficient in minerals, especially, but other nutrients as well, then you will always be hungry. Your body's not stupid. It knows what it needs, but it doesn't tell you in English, right? You get this hunger sensation. You don't get it in words. If it could, it would tell you, hey, I need some molybdenum, right? Hey, I need some iron. I need some zinc, but it doesn't tell you that. It just gives you a random craving. So it usually is for minerals. No matter what you eat, even good food, it's physically impossible to get enough minerals from our food supply. So you will always remain hungry. You can do your best to quell it. You can have the best willpower in the world. The cravings will catch up with you eventually. And again, her clue there that she's craving salt, salt is minerals, right? So you might just be salt deficient. You might need more salt than you ever thought you needed. This is a big mistake that a lot of healthy people do. They eat real food, they make it at home with love, and they don't put enough salt on it because they drastically underestimate how much salt we actually need. And most people are not supplementing with well-rounded, heavy-duty mineral supplements. That's what you really need to knock out cravings. Keep in mind when farm animals or zoo animals or even wild animals are eating wood and bark and clay and old bones and leather gloves, they're eating all these things. We call it pica. And the behavior itself is cribbing. They're chewing on things, chewing on everything. They'll chew the handles off the barn and off the wagons and all this. And the solution for that has been known in agriculture for 100 years or more. You give them a trace mineral salt block and or bone meal added to them. Minerals, both of those are mineral sources, and they stop it. They stop the behavior within days, usually. So human beings, we don't chew on our desk. We chew on candy bars, right? And cookies and all this stuff. So I'm saying that the craving is your body communicating with you. We just don't know how to read that communication and give it minerals instead of giving it, whatever the junk food is at night or the heavily sugar-laden food at night. But I would also say that to me, carbs are an essential nutrient. And this is very, very controversial at this point in time where everyone seems to be against carbs. It does not make sense logically. Even you can make a case for it, but to me, it doesn't make logical sense. And it definitely doesn't make sense empirically. When you look at all the longest lived populations, all of them, without exception, are omnivores. And most of them are heavily, heavily based on carbs. Their societies are based on carbs. They're based on starches. If you look at Asia, I mean, Africa and all this, the entire third world lives on carbs and starches. And guess what? It's not until they modernize and start living the way that we do that they start to get diabetes and osteoporosis and cancer and all these other problems, candida and stuff. Candida is probably completely unheard of in populations who eat their traditional diets, which always or almost always include a carb base. Carb is the bottom of their food pyramid that they do in the primitive world. There are a few very small exceptions, the Inuit and a few African tribes and stuff, and it's those few exceptions that the carnivore and keto worlds latch onto as an example of what we should follow. But that doesn't make sense because there's far more populations and millions upon millions, if not billions of people who are doing just fine, living to a ripe old age without endemic diseases in their societies, and they're heavily carb based. So a lot of people try to go healthy, try to go keto, try to go carnivore, and they just can't do it. I tried that. I've tried keto, I've tried carnivore, I've tried paleo. I hated keto. I hated it. I was dying for some rice or some potatoes or something like that. Right? So this is the wisdom of our body. We think we're smarter than our body. Well, you're 100% wrong. Right? If your body is telling you it wants carbs, it probably wants carbs. It can function without them. It can. We have backup mechanisms where we can start burning fat and amino acids for our energy. And it's technically more efficient, but that doesn't mean that your overall metabolism is not going to suffer over time of doing that. Most of these fad diets, the studies and the case studies, the people who adopt them originally, they're used to base the diet on. Meanwhile, those studies are short term, right? Most of these people who try these diets, I lost 40 pounds in 3 months. I mean, that sounds fantastic, right? I'm feeling great. I've got lots of energy. It sounds great. Give it 2 or 3 years, right? Give it 5, 10 years. And then the real problems with these diets start to show up. And of course, here in our position in the alternative health world, we always have to clean up the messes of these diets. Right? When I first started in this business, veganism was all the rage, and we'd have to deal with all these people who were vegan and had screwed their metabolism up with veganism, and we have to get them back on an omnivorous diet. And then carnivore, paleo, keto all came in heavily. And now, a couple of years after carnivore's peak popularity, we've got to clean up all the metabolic messes from these people who took those diets seriously. So once again, all of the longest lived populations, without exception, are omnivores. There are a few healthy populations that are carnivore or keto based, basically, but they're not the longest lived populations, not at all. And so we have a huge, massive case study of millions upon millions of people who have done perfectly well on omnivorous diets with extra mineral sources in their food that are usually not mentioned about in the books or the lectures. You have to read between the lines and know what you're looking for primitive sources of mineral supplements, basically, including irrigating their farm fields, using wood ashes in their food and in their fertilization, composting, and the consumption of bones as well. Again, both in the food and as part of their fertilization as well. So
Thank you for
listen to the body. If your body's craving carbs, your body's smarter than you are. It's smarter than your doctor. It probably wants it. And you could say, oh, maybe I'm just not doing keto enough, right? Maybe I'm not doing it properly. That's what they usually say online. Hey, I'm not feeling good on this carnivore. Oh, you must not be doing it correctly. No, your body knows better. It wants what it wants. I do great on carbs. I feel better on it than any of these fad diets have ever made me feel. And, I know that sentiment is shared by many, many, many people who do our omnivorous take on a healthy lifestyle rather than one of these extremely restricted ones where you're cutting out entire food groups. You should never do that, including carbs. If anything, a lot of people need more carbs. Last comment. I actually have to tell and kind of even argue with a lot of people to get back on carbs because they've been brainwashed against carbs when it doesn't make sense. And they won't start feeling better and their metabolism won't start improving and their basal temperature won't start going up until they add carbs back in, many of them.
And when you're talking about carbs, you're talking about whole food carbs. You're not talking about potato chips. You're not talking about the junk food. Is that right?
Well, that is correct, but that's only because the potato chips will be oxidized oil, right? They make them in oil and oil's heated, so it's oxidized. So that's trans fat. That's free radical damage. But the chip itself, I mean, I love potatoes. I'm a huge fan of potatoes, not just for myself, just in general. It's a health food. It's one of the most maligned health foods out there. It's a real whole food, and it's good for us. I do believe it's part of our proper diet. Yeah, the junk foods with the additives and the overheating and the oils and the MSG and all this stuff is junk. Yeah.
So Michelle had a follow-up. She said she was the one that said she always craves sweets and salts at nighttime. She says, I do drink hydration drinks all day though. So are hydration drinks good, or is there something else that might be better for her?
What does she mean by hydration drink? Electrolytes?
She didn't elaborate any more than hydration drinks.
I have no idea what that means. Electrolyte drinks usually are just salt and sugar. Most of them are just salt and sugar and water with a dye or a flavoring or something like that. Some of them have potassium in it. Usually the amount of potassium is not significant. But if you feel better drinking one of these drinks, and I'm assuming it does have sugar in it because most of them do, then again, that would be a big clue that your body wants that.
So what about fasting? Is fasting a good idea?
Fasting is complicated. It's good and bad. It has huge, huge metabolic benefits when it's done properly. A lot of people go way overboard, especially those who are trying to lose weight. And I think people need to understand that the most effective versions of fasting out there, to me, to my opinion and my research and whatever, appear to be full day fasts, 1, 2, or 3 day fasts. And the benefits basically max out around 3 days. So if you do longer than that, you're not getting much more benefit than you would get from just doing your 3 day fast. But a lot of people take this too far into incorporating it every day. right, into doing intermittent fasting or alternate day fasting and stuff like that. And that will put so much pressure on your metabolism that you may have to keep fasting in order to keep the weight off. This is the problem that a lot of people find themselves in, again, especially when it's done for weight loss, that they'll fast until they start losing weight, and then they'll remain at this very low calorie intake on a weekly basis or something with alternate day fasting or intermittent fasting or, once a week fasting or whatever. And they could very easily end up not having enough caloric intake to run their metabolism properly. And so the weight will only stay off as long as they stay so restricted. And they'll have to use massive amounts of willpower to keep that rolling because their body's screaming at them to eat and they have to turn that off or crowd it out. So it can be very beneficial. Some people are not there yet, right? A lot of people want to jump right in. I mean, it's easy, it's free, it's an easy thing to sign on to. But if you have blood sugar problem, it's probably going to be even dangerous for you, right? You don't want to pass out, get low blood sugar, fall down the stairs or something like that. This can happen. It's a legitimate concern. So a lot of people are not metabolically capable of fasting properly until they can do it without those blood sugar crashes. And again, a lot of people are relying on fasting, whereas just a decent whole food omnivorous diet with a good, well-rounded supplement program will get them where they need to go. And then if you fast on top of it, it's even better. Just don't take it too far. A lot of people take it way, way, way too far.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I actually was talking to somebody the other day, and he's been doing fasting where he just eats one meal a day, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's a large meal. But would that mess up his metabolism long term?
Yeah, men are gonna have an easier time doing it than women. Remember, women have a higher metabolic demand. They have more going on in their body, especially if they're menstruating or pregnant or anything like that, obviously. But yeah, 20-year-old man, 30-year-old man can do one meal a day, probably pretty easily. Almost certainly they're going to have some other caloric source somewhere else in the day, whether it's sugar in their coffee or something, right? Some treat that really is, high calorie or high sugar food that they're going to rely on. I did one meal a day for many, many years. I'm pretty sure it destroyed my stomach. I started getting random stomach pains that were crippling, and they just got worse and worse and worse. It took me a few years to figure it out. And I don't have proof that it was intermittent fasting, but I'm pretty sure it was that. It was 10 years of doing that. It's too much. So I thrived on it at first, and then eventually I didn't, right? There was not enough. I was not consuming enough to run my metabolism or my digestion system, and I started to get major symptoms from that. And I've seen this with other people as well, right? So keep in mind when you see a lot of these influencers or studies talking about the benefits of intermittent fasting or one meal a day, those studies are usually short term. Those people have usually not done it for more than a few years, right? But you start going into 5, 6, 10 years, you're going to see problems on any of these very restrictive diets, including intermittent fasting.
Absolutely. And I know you talk so much in our membership about how women especially have metabolic issues because they've been on so many different diets, programs that their body doesn't know how to operate anymore. And it takes time to fine tune it again and turn it around. And for those of you that are just tuning in, and maybe this is your first Dr. Reese live for head to toe healing. Dr. Reese isn't here, but we are here as his team sharing information with you. If you're interested about our program, our membership, and how you can turn your health around and get head to toe healing, go to drkevinreese.com. There is tons of educational materials on our website, as well as testimonials and a start page. So if you do want to get more information, talk to us one-on-one about your situation, we do offer free calls, like a Zoom call or a phone call with you. And that way you can get more information to move forward. Next, Annette was on the chat here, and she was saying that she's been doing keto for up to 3 years. When she adds carbs back into her diet, her blood sugar goes up, and it's a problem. She also has ringworm. She said, how can you advise getting carbs back into her diet? Ryan, I'm going to throw that back over to you.
It's a perfect illustration of what we were just talking about, right? So she's controlling her blood sugar or blood pressure or blood cholesterol or weight, whatever, controlling it with this extremely restricted diet. Well, it's true. If you do restrict your diet extremely, your blood sugar should be under control. A lot of people will be able to control their blood sugar that way, but that's no way to live. And your metabolism is dying in there, right? So you eat carbs again, and your blood sugar goes up. Tells you you don't have enough minerals to handle sugar properly, to handle insulin. You need many different nutrients. Most of them are minerals, but there's lots of auxiliary nutrients that are involved as well, vitamins and amino acids and so on, essential fatty acids. All the major nutrient groups are involved in processing sugar. So you need nutrients to digest it and to pull it apart from foods. You need nutrients to recognize insulin in the cell. You need the other nutrients to even produce insulin in the first place. So every part of the sugar metabolism requires a bunch of nutrients. Those nutrients are fundamentally deficient in our food supply. So you're controlling it right now by just not eating that much food or by not eating carbs. I mean, it's true. If you only eat protein and fat, you'll have less of an insulin response. You'll be less insulin resistant, but you're avoiding the actual problem. The problem is mineral deficiency and possibly other nutrient deficiencies that are not allowing your body to either recognize insulin or to utilize it to get the glucose into the cells. Again, this is a whole gang of nutrients that are needed for this. So it's never going to be fixed on this restricted diet. You have to import the nutrients that are missing, and then you will be able to eat carbs and you'll be fine. I like to give this example. Again, I know what the response is too. I always say, I can eat a whole plate of cookies before I go to bed, no problem. I don't have diabetes. I'm not overweight. I'm actually in great shape, and I've been trying to work out more lately. And I think I've gained 10 or 15 pounds in the last couple of months. I'm feeling excellent. I look younger than my age. And when people say, well, yeah, it's just because you have a good metabolism. That's what they say, right? They say you can't compare that. We're not the same. You have a better metabolism. And I say, that is exactly my point, right? I have an omnivorous diet. I'd supplement with all 90 essential nutrients at appropriate doses, and therefore my body can handle the sugar no matter how much I put in it all at once. And I'm not saying I eat a plate of cookies every single day, but I'm saying I absolutely can. The blood sugar will not spike that much. The crash will not be that much. If I eat the whole plate, it's going to go up, but it's not going to go up to diabetes level. It's not going to affect me in a couple of hours because my body is going to be able to process all of that sugar because it has enough nutrients to do so. And anybody can fix their metabolism to where you can do that because we see this all the time, right? I have to eat this way because if I add anything else in, I'll gain weight. Your metabolism's struggling and you're keeping your weight down only with sheer force of will, and it's not what your body wants.
If I could throw on there real quick, this is something that I dealt with personally, and I wanted to share my experience for this lady asking about, how do I incorporate carbs back in? Because I used to, I would have like one sugary drink or I would have a bowl of rice or something, and I'd have a hangover like 2 hours later, and it was brutal. And the only way I could really keep that from being an issue is I would fast for 5 days, just salt water for 5 days. And then I could do those things and it was no problem. But at a certain point, I would peak out again. I'd start getting headaches again from, feeling hungover again after a bowl of rice. And then I'm like, okay, time for another fast. And I'd fast for another 5 days. However, when I finally got on a blood sugar protocol, that it was like the only other thing that I found that allowed me to eat the way I wanted to eat without the crashes like that, without the feeling of being hungover. And so doing this protocol for, a couple of weeks, it wasn't even a crazy amount of time. Next thing you know, I would eat a little bit of a carb and I'm like, wow, I don't feel anything. I don't feel hungry. It feels like I just fasted, but I haven't done any fasting. Those same results you can get through fasting are the same results you can get through nutrition. And, obviously there's other things at play here too. Like you don't want to ignore your mindfulness, or your posture stuff. Because if you get too dogmatic into anything, like this is one of the reasons why I love what Ryan does. He's all about nutrition, but he's also not dogmatic about it. He's not full blown like there's nothing but nutrition. He's like, no, maybe you do want to work out a little bit. Or if you get into a bind, maybe you do want to use some antibiotics. He's like, all of these things are options, and I want to pick the best ones for whatever the problem is. And that's incredibly important for anybody trying to work on anything. If you're so into keto or so into carnivore or so into vegan or so into nutrients, you're going to get stuck at some point. You need to be less dogmatic and more open to what's available to you. Like, had I been so stuck in my fasting, been like, no, I have it figured out, I never would have been able to get out of that fasting routine and restricted myself for 5 straight days, which is easy if I'm at home with nothing going on. Not so easy if I'm traveling or on a family trip or it's Christmas or something like that. I can't necessarily manage those types of extreme practices when, normal life is going on. Not normal life, but we'll say like, having fun or wanting to go celebrate somebody's birthday. There's always something that came up that would stop me from being able to do a fast. And then I would suffer for all those days until I was able to do a fast. So if you want to start reincorporating carbs without the fasting, without the keto, without the whatever you're using as a band-aid, like Ryan's saying, the underlying issue being nutritional or postural, those things could very easily be alleviated so that you don't have to do that. And it doesn't take very long. You just get on the right program. Ryan will give you a top-notch program to help you reverse that. I'll make sure your mindset's not getting in the way. Sean will make sure your posture and everything is good. So there's good circulation, everything's moving through the body. And that should do it. You should be able to then go eat a bowl of rice without having a hangover 2 hours later.
That's funny. I wanted to loop back over to Coach Sean and just follow up. Earlier in our talk, you were talking about posture and how that can really positively impact people, especially when they're dealing with candida or chronic health conditions. So, would you elaborate a little bit more how the musculoskeletal system needs support on a regular basis, a daily basis, and how that can help people turn their life around and start getting more mobility, balance, and just feeling better?
Yeah, of course. So I always say that people nowadays, in this little dot of human history, we're living in a box. And if you notice, I think I brought this up last time, but ask yourself, when is the last time I reached up to grab something? When is the last time I twisted around to get something behind me? When is the last time I pulled myself up onto something? And the list can go on, but when was the last time I squatted down? But it's like we're living in this inactive bubble, and so we're causing the restriction. We're causing all of the dysfunction by not doing anything. And so the importance is getting active throughout the day, not sitting down for an hour on end doing nothing, you know, doing whether you're working or you're just relaxing. If it's throughout the day and it's not a relaxing part of the night, do something, get up, walk around. Um, because we can do posture therapy, and developed this condition, spinal stenosis, some postural condition for 30 or 40 years, and you get to the point where you want our help now. Well, you can't just do a class for an hour or so and then get right back into sitting down and lying down. You actually have to apply the mechanics or apply that new posture that you just created for yourself in the class. Because if you did a side by side of when you began the class and then at the end of the class, there's always improvement. But really, the work happens like, what do you do for the rest of the day? What body are you bringing to this sitting down posture? What body are you bringing to sleep? Um, all of these things have a factor. I think I'm getting away from your question, Karen. Does that answer it or?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, I wanted to loop back with Coach Gingy too. Gingy, how does mindfulness, the mind-body connection, play a role in reversing chronic health conditions that people have? Sometimes they've been visiting the medical system for quite some time. It could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or more. And they might be feeling like there's no way to reverse things. How does the mind play a role in that?
Well, I'd say hope is the number one thing because you don't want to accept the belief that you're hopeless, that there is no solution to your problem. So long as you hold out for hope, so long as you're open to finding a solution, you will be in a position to find one, in a position to see it when it shows up for you. So that's the first one. I love the way that Dr. Reese describes this in his books. He says that you have this onboard computer, the brain in your skull, and it's connected to this whole network. I don't remember exactly the terminology he uses. I think he uses hard or motherboard or something like that. But basically, the brain is connected to all of the different organs and tissues and glands and all of the different systems of the body through the nervous system. So, like the brain is part of this whole long network of the nervous system. And so, of course, whatever is going through your head, through your mind, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're believing, is going to impact the way that the body functions. Now, there are some very simple, easy ways to understand that this is the fact of how the body works. Number one, a lot of people understand the nervous system. Your nervous system has basically two gears. It either perceives the external reality as safe or as dangerous. And so if it perceives it as dangerous, or there's something to be concerned about, or some type of threat potential, then it will activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is a whole different host of operations that moves nutrients and resources away from digestion, away from, other systems of the body, and turns on production of adrenaline and cortisol. And this is where you get your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And so if you find yourself in the day, feeling like you need to fight something or run away from something, like say a conversation with your boss or your significant other, it's very easy to see that that's the nervous system that's activated. And if that nervous system is activated, you're not going to be digesting or absorbing your nutrients properly. You're going to be spiking your cortisol and adrenaline and other stress hormones, which keep in mind, those also spike your blood sugar, funny enough. They send signals to your liver to release glucose into the bloodstream, causing a blood sugar rise, which guess what is going to cause candida to increase as well and consume a lot of those glucose those sugar molecules going through the blood. So it's funny. I was just talking with somebody who was telling me, yeah, I had this massively bad breakup and all this negative stuff was happening. I was so stressed out. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't even eating, but yet I was gaining weight. Every single day I was gaining weight, but I wasn't eating anything for like 5 days straight. It's like, how could that possibly be if I wasn't eating any calories? I'm like, well, you were stressed out. And I had to explain to her the mind-body connection in weight gain without calorie intake. And so it's incredibly impactful, which is why if you can switch your mindset and your emotional state and your nervous system over to the parasympathetic, we call this rest and digest or rest and restore or rebuild. There's a lot of different ways people tell it, but this is when digestion works better. There's no stress hormones. There's other hormones that get produced like melatonin, help you sleep, cortisol, loving and bonding, and all this stuff starts to happen when that nervous system is activated. And so this is literally your brain through its five senses experiencing the world and making an interpretation or a judgment of it's safe or it's dangerous. And that informs the way the rest of the body starts to operate. This will turn on muscles and get tense. This will relax muscles. From top to bottom. It is so important to understand this because we don't have a scientific model that ignores this. This is so prevalent and so foundational that we do double blind and triple blind studies to avoid the placebo effect impacting our study materials and our courses and our, all the information that we use to verify and validate hypotheses in the scientific method. You come up with a hypothesis, you put it forth, you test it through double blind and triple blind studies, and you get results back and you analyze the results. You see any loopholes, and then you do that enough times and you get peer-reviewed studies. The next thing you know, we have this huge body of information that informs the way that we move forward in the world. It informs the way we move forward with medicine or with healing or anything else. So like you can't ignore the mind-body connection and be able to be effective. There are plenty of people that come to me after trying everything. They've dialed in their nutrition, they've dialed in their posture, they've dialed in all of these different things, but they're still not seeing the last 10% of their results. And they sit down and talk with me and they find out a little forgiveness is what did it. Or a little, relaxation, changing your mindset, and then you get a good night's sleep. There's some kind of thing for them that gets tweaked. In fact, this was the case for my mom, actually. It wasn't until she slept right that her liver cirrhosis really finished healing. And so like it is massively important. I don't know how to if I could overstate the importance of the mind-body connection, but I hope that illustrates a little bit as to how it works, and why it's important.
Thank you for sharing that. Actually, in the chats today, we have Wanda. Wanda, I want to say welcome. Apparently, she just joined our membership about 3 days ago. She's trying to overcome diabetes and her high blood pressure. We are there for you, and we're super excited you're going to be part of our team and look forward to seeing your reversals as they unfold. I had another question in the chat. I want to direct this over to Coach Ryan. Grace is saying that she was doing the medical medium with fruit and veg for about 1.5 years, and she's still sick. Any thoughts or tips for her, Ryan?
Yeah, the medical medium does not emphasize replacing missing minerals enough. It's the biggest part of biggest problem with his program, I think. All these foods have different nutrient profiles, right? So each camp thinks they're getting a lot of nutrients. I'm eating plants. I'm getting tons of these phytonutrients. I'm getting tons of vitamins. I'm getting tons of flavonoids, lots of antioxidants. I mean, that's true, but you're missing the huge doses of the fats and some of the major minerals that would be in the animal products. For example, a lot of vitamins are much more highly concentrated in animal products. And if you eat only animal products, then you're going to be missing again most of the antioxidants and the phytonutrients, the bioflavonoids, and different vitamins as well. So once again, we are omnivores. Any diet, Felicia in the comments said it perfectly. Any one of these fad diets, if they work at all, it's most likely because you got off the standard American diet. If you stop eating processed foods, no matter which diet you pick, even if they're opposite diets, right? You could go carnivore, or you could go vegan. They're opposite, but if you get off of processed foods, you're going to feel better, most likely. Most people do feel better, at least for a period of time. You might lose weight, your blood sugar might get controlled. Again, opposite diets, different nutrient profiles, and yet you should get more or less the same results. Most people do start out feeling quite good, at least for a couple of months, sometimes for a couple of years, but it's going to burn out. There's not enough nutrients in any diet, right? There's not enough minerals in the soil, so it doesn't matter how much further up the food chain you want to go. There is not enough minerals there for us, period. You can have the perfectly designed paleo diet or whatever. There is not enough nutrients in it. This has been calculated. You would need to eat more calories than you could possibly handle. You would explode, right? And now with all those extra calories, now you need even more nutrients to process all that. I'm only talking about the RDAs, right? Even the government, even the people who came up with the RDAs say it's physically impossible to get enough of the RDAs by eating any diet. So medical medium, same thing. Can't possibly be enough nutrients in it. Carnivore, same thing. Can't possibly be enough nutrients in it. There's lots of some and there's very little of others. And when you have certain high doses of some things, like phosphorus, for example, not going to get all the way into it, but it massively increases your need for other nutrients. Once again, every society who got enough nutrients in their food supply did not ever do it just from their food supply. It wasn't just that their apples had more minerals in it. They put them in there, right? They irrigated their fields with mineral rich water. They used natural fertilizers such as compost, ash, manure, bones. They ate wood ash, which is a major, massive, significant source of human mineral consumption for eons until we had electricity. And they use bones as well, eat it as well. None of that is just with food. They have to put effort in to make sure that there's more minerals in the growing fields. And they didn't know what they were doing. They just knew that food grew better, plants grew better when it was properly fertilized. They didn't know that they were fortifying their entire base of their diet with absorbable, high quality, high doses of minerals, especially. So again, pick whatever diet you want. It doesn't have enough minerals in it. That's why most of them don't work. And that's why we can be a lot more relaxed about it. We don't cut out entire food groups and still get good results because we use those minerals.
That is so important and so true. I was one of those ones. I was on a whole food plant-based diet for 5 years. And when I started it, it was marvelous. I was thriving. Things were happening. But after 5 years, my body was falling apart. And that's when I found Dr. Reese just about 2.5, 3 years ago. And then my life changed and I started reversing the issues that were going on with my body. And that can happen for you too. And if you're curious about head to toe healing and what we do and what Dr. Reese has put together in our membership, I encourage you to go to Amazon, get this book, Medical Monopoly, start there. And if you want more information, read Head to Toe Healing, and then go to our website, drkevinreese.com. There's tons of educational materials on there, testimonials, and a start page. We would love to talk to you. You can book a free call with us, phone call, Zoom call. We can talk to you about what's going on with your situation, what you're trying to overcome, and see if head to toe healing is for you. The one thing I need to say, though, is you have to be willing to make yourself your own project for a whole year. You have to be committed. You have to show up and do the work. It's not something magical. It's something that you interact within our membership. You show up and our community cheers you on. And that's why Wanda was here in our group and Felicia's in our group here in the comments. These are individuals that are making a change in their life, and you can do that too. So until next week, we will be back next week, same time, Head to Toe Healing live, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a fabulous week, and we will see you soon.